Hello, welcome to SHOWstudio. We're here talking about Gucci today. Let's start with the introductions. I'll start with you, Mimma.
Hi, I'm Mimma Viglezio and I'm a consultant.
Hello, I'm Elise by Olsen. I'm the editor-in-chief of Reason's paper.
Hi, I'm Thomas Cohen and I'm a musician.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Falconer and I'm business director at Matthew Williamson.
And I'm Mactaggart. I'm also a musician, archivist at One of a Kind Archive, and this is my inaugural women's wear panel, which I'm very excited about. Thank you for joining us. I kind of wanted to start by setting the scene pre-Michele. In 2014, we had probably, for me, one of the most unforgivable Gucci collections, which was Spring/Summer 2014. And I thought this was a real low point for Giannini, people were very critical about her. People think she was too commercial, too conservative. We went from this kind of collection to a big kind of soap opera transition of power, and into this steps a kind of in-house, fairly unknown designer who kind of explodes the scene with clashing prints and pussy bows and all sorts. I just kind of want to get everyone's first kind of instinctive reaction when they saw Michele's new vision. Perhaps I'll start with you, Mimma, as our resident Italian.
Well, I'm not Italian, but I worked for Gucci for a long time, so. I was there during Frida's time. At the beginning, she was the new big thing because actually, business-wise, it worked. And probably at the time it was what was needed. You know, she was playing with the sexy thing, but not as much as Tom did. So she was talking about going from sexy to sensual. And it was a whole blah blah that at the time worked. And but then, and Frida was a hard-working person. She was looking at the figure. She was in the office early morning. She was loved by her team. I tell you, it was working. Was I a fan of the style? No, but that doesn't matter, you know, figures-wise, it was good. The problem I think that Frida had is that she didn't move on with the time. She stuck to what she liked and she believed was right. And that's exactly the opposite of what Michele is. Let's call him Alessandro, which is even easier for you to pronounce. Alessandro has a vision of the future. I think he is very much in tune with the time, and even more, he knows what will come. And he's giving people what they want. And apart from me loving what he does style-wise, but that again doesn't matter, I think he did this revolution so fast also because he has the best boss he could have. I think Alessandro without Marco and Marco without Alessandro, it wouldn't work that well. And I think they're perfect together because they're both very smart. They both believe strongly in what they do. They're both very authentic, so you can like it or not, but that's what they believe in. And we've seen the figures. I mean, plus 20% in the last quarter without discounting, 14% up last year, which was the worst for the fashion industry in a long time. So it works.
And Marco just won the, I think it was the Business Award at the BFAs as well. Michele did very well there as well. It's great seeing a kind of marriage of fantastic creative explosion with something that works.
The last one where I think Christopher Bailey and Angela Arendt, and I think it's not by chance that they started having quite some problem when she left, because it worked. Because you need both. I think.
How about some other first reactions to
when we first saw the change?
Yeah.
I think I was overwhelmed with joy as a fellow maximalist. I just met it with relief, and it was nectar seeing that on whichever platform you saw that on, whether it was in print, whether it was digital. I think one thing that they've done so well as a business is the digital overhaul, and the fact that Alessandro's vision is there right from, even in an e-newsletter, which a lot of brands, it's quite boring, it's just a commercial selling tool, and his move with sweet little animated GIFs, and they have illustrations. His vision is so all-encompassing. So at first it was joy and intrigue, and then I also noticed that it began to, I was really fascinated to see it go from being a bit of I think commercially, some people found it quite hard to take in at the time because it was coupled with minimalism and Celine, and it was a shock to the system for the consumer. And then I've seen friends of mine who don't work in the fashion industry, who were lawyers, who work in the city. It's now become their go-to thing that they lust after each month. So
they shop with snakes and beasts on their...
well, exactly. Or with, you know, that's the joy of the commercialism, isn't it? The easy to buy into bags, or the little knit that just has a little bit of embellishment. Not perhaps the full-blown ostrich feather gown, which is what I wear to meetings instead.
Or perhaps the loafers.
Yes, the loafers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the loafers.
The loafers. I actually wear them every day. I wear them every single day.
That's good PR.
Firstly, because I like wearing clothes. But I think it's interesting, you know, when you're saying about the commercialism and how, say, a lawyer could go and get a bag or a pair of shoes or whatever. I actually think that those are the things that are the strongest, and the shoe designs are incredible, and that is very forward-thinking and almost not really reminiscent of anything. You know, the classic fur loafer is something, or is it a mule? What do you call it? A mule? It's something I've never ever seen before. You know.
Yeah, and I think it's the fact that it's not an it bag or an it shoe, it's just a really beautiful accessory that encompasses the maximalist vision of Alessandro, and it's not...
Apart from the furry loafer that has been a little bit too much for my taste. But
that is true.
Those are classics that will be great
Yeah,
forever.
exactly.
But, you know,
I think as well, like, well, I don't know about fashion from the business side of things, but just as from the outside, like the relief that you were talking about was huge, especially menswear wise. You know, previous to which the only thing I think I knew about Gucci was like James Franco's leather jacket or something. And then suddenly it was like, oh my God, there's all these clothes that I would love to wear, you know. And I personally can't ever really remember that happening, certainly not with a brand which was as big as Gucci.
That's the line that every brand would like to hear.
Sure.
Oh my God, all those clothes I would like to wear.
Yeah.
And that's where it's amazing.
But there are still, I think we talk about this like it's, or a lot of people have talked about it like it was a complete breath of fresh air in Gucci, but I mean, I think there's a lot, he picks up a lot from the archive, and there's a lot of things I can still see that are reminiscent of. There's a collection, I think it's Spring Summer 99 that Tom Ford did, where he uses a lot of embroidery. Yeah, that's exactly the image I'm thinking of.
Wow.
He did the kind of these kind of Native American inspired trousers which had lots of feathers on the bottom. There's still.
there.
Oh, I remember those.
You
I
remember
tried to
those?
make my own. I
Alessandro
DIY'd my own Tom Ford
He
jeans.
was there.
Well,
Alessandro's
exactly.
been
Yes, exactly.
in Gucci for all these years, so he knows the archives.
Yes.
Because he made some of it.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been there for 14 years,
Yeah.
hasn't he? And I think it's having one must have respect for the archives always, but then it's putting your own style on it and looking at that. The difference is that Alessandro, it's the more is more attitude, and it's this styling where you pile more on, but it works. And
Which is very difficult to do right.
Yeah.
And it works even if you then buy it like me and wear it in a minimal way. And it's amazing because that's when I say there's something for everybody, you know, and he piles up because that's his style, but then the pieces themselves, they just beautiful.
And there's something really joyful about seeing maximalism on the runway. There's something kind of youthful about just wanting to pile things on. We're often kind of drilled with that bastardized Chanel quote that you have to take one thing off before you leave the house or something. This always seemed to me about putting two things on before you leave. And at a time when maybe there's been a lot of kind of ironic takes on fashion and kind of this just seemed honest and joyful and passionate. And I think that's where I really started to fall in love with it, because at first I thought, oh God, this is a bit hideous really. I mean, this is a bit, I just found it too much straight away. That was my very first reaction. I thought, this is too kitsch. I don't know,
What was your first, did you see it on the catwalk, or did you see it in a campaign or editorial?
I think it was actually seeing the first men's, it was very much about the pussy bow. And actually the person I was dating at the time immediately went out and bought one of these nude shirts with a pussy bow, and I thought, what on earth is happening? And then it was on the cover of Man About Town as well, I remember. But I think it was really getting into the kind of honesty of Alessandro's work, and how he just kind of embodied that guy. I just love seeing designers wearing their own stuff and loving that.
That's a very good point, because I don't know if I was saying it here or somewhere else, but you see these designers that do crazy stuff that everybody's like, ooh, who's going to wear that? They don't even wear it.
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking about someone who I hugely admire, is J.W. Anderson. He is always in blue cashmere and jeans, and you're like, what the heck, do you like what you do, right?
Yeah, I always find that very strange.
Alessandro
It's like a kind of
always wears, look,
voyeurism.
he always wears what he does, and he wears it in a crazy way.
Yes.
And it's, I think it's also for him, it's a lifestyle. I love the stories of hearing when he moved into his new office. And he just moved in this quite impractical furniture, like a 19th century huge desk, because he wanted that to be a space to have meetings or to co-work with another
He couldn't fit it in any
colleague.
of his apartments, and this was finally the space where he could
Where it could
put
go.
it. And
You should have
And
seen the
Baroque
office
chairs. Because it was so minimal, wasn't it?
before. There was a little bit of gold, but the funny thing is not what it looked like and what it looks like now. I haven't been back, so I can only imagine. It's the difference. It's the delta between the two. And Alessandro was Frida right man. I mean, he was the closest to her. He was, I think at the end, I'm not sure what I'm saying, but he was the studio director. He wasn't only the accessory designer. So they were very close, and he was there and he was doing his job. And then one day the job was given to him and he was like, "Whoa," you know, like a volcano erupting. And that's interesting.
Storing up all of his vision.
Yeah, whatever he had to probably frustrate for a while.
Right. Being
You
working
said
in this-
authentic. I think that's the word that fits the best.
But it seems like some kind of external creative director would bring this kind of full vision to a house.
Someone
Kind
from
of,
it-
and bring
some
it,
from
within,
within.
he had, there was that kind of 5 days where something had to be pulled together. The casting changed, the venue changed, all the stores were fitted out with this.
Yeah.
You can walk into Dover Street Market now and there's this entirely different world.
But have you
inside
walked
the
into
store.
the Bond Street one, which is fantastic? It's the closest to...
The Bond Street store.
Yeah, because the one in Sloane Street is still half-half, so it's a little bit, but the Bond Street is. Yeah, it's really interesting.
I think that's what's going to be really interesting about today, the show today, is that world, it's so complete, and it is referencing like the 18th century and the 70s, and it's somehow also like modern, and then you've got like, the archive of Gucci, nudie suits, Soko the cat, and it's like, okay, like I know this complete world, and I can walk into Bond Street and I can be a part of that complete world, but like,
Exactly.
where's this world going? Where is it? Like, am I?
Well, that's what happened when I spoke
permanent
to a lot of
snake?
people about doing this panel, was whether they liked what Alessandro was doing or not. They wanted to know where it was developing.
Because I think, it's as a brand, working for a brand which is a like-minded maximalist brand.
Well, you're
Yeah, I think the difficult thing about colour and embroidery and print, if that's what you believe in, you're going to stick to that. You're not really going to deviate. That's the DNA of the house and the handwriting of the house, and whether it goes in and out of fashion, and I think that's what Alessandro's been so clever about this. He believes in a timeless aesthetic and something that won't look tired after a season. Fantastic. So regardless of fashion, you really must stick to that DNA. The issue is that, I'm sure we've all noticed, the embroidery that has been pulled off on the high street in the last 6 months is quite something. And it's actually also really amazing quality. You've got to admire it. And so that look has permeated, and that's fantastic in a lot of ways. So how are you going to move that forward without it being...
I need to say something here, and I must admit I just read a big interview of Marco Bizzarri this morning.
Oh, on WWD.
And he explains how they produce, especially the accessories, because it's still 55% of their business, thinking about the problem of the counterfeiter or the high street. And they say, yes, it's easy to apply, you know, snakes and bees and whatever that everybody now is trying to do to leather, but the down to the detail, if you take one of those bags and you look at the detail and the way it's done by artisans, blah, 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 it's very, very difficult to really copy. And the way he redesigned the logo and how he embroidered the logo or how he asked artists to redo the logo, you know, people can copy, but he will be somewhere else already now. So I like...
No, completely, I agree. He'll be one step ahead. And I think, unlike actually the joy of it not being an it bag, you know, that when an it bag is a simple shape, perhaps, that's almost, and I think that's the joy of heavy embroidery and craftsmanship being at the core. Certainly for us, that's a benefit. If you put craftsmanship at the core, then that is very difficult to copy, unlike a certain cut, perhaps, or a certain kind of logo.
But he's also
but I think it's more the maximalism trend as a whole. Where is that going? Maybe that's more the question, and maybe that's what your friends meant.
Well, he's also incorporated fake culture or counterfeit culture into the brand by working with this Gucci ghost character and doing these kind of graffiti version logos and not a real Gucci and stuff. I wanted to bring you in, Elise, here about how that kind of relates more to youth culture or counterfeit culture, and how he's managed to incorporate that into the branding of one of the biggest luxury houses.
Yeah. What I think is that like my generation and like young people today are having, you know, like much less respect for these like big brands.
Right.
Somehow, and you know, I'm wearing a fake Gucci bag today, and it's like really bad fake. But it's like that's sort of like what I can relate to Gucci and like.
Right.
I was also really happy when I saw that they were making those like Gucci like print logo T-shirts, because this is something that, for me, it says something about like that they are sort of like understanding this, I don't know, this young audience.
Because it's a rebellious thing, I think, for young people to wear the fake and be proud about wearing the fake.
Well, I guess, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
You do it as a rebellion?
Yeah, it's...
But to what? To capitalism or to mass market?
I mean, I just think that like we are having like less respect for like the authorities and like the powers of the industry, and maybe we're not even like familiar with it. Maybe we haven't like looked into it. Maybe we don't know anything about it, you know. And maybe it isn't in our interest to know anything about it either, because I think, you know, like these like big luxury brands are feeling like a bit too distant for us somehow.
And does Alessandro Michele feel distant as well, what he's doing?
No, I think like, you know, he's like bringing this understanding for me, like towards this audience, and like when he made those like T-shirts and, you know, like all the logo stuff, it's, I don't know, it feels to me that he's like accepting like that the youth is, you know, not having this respect for the big power.
For the big logo.
And for a lot of people, their experience of Gucci is not a Gucci boutique in Bond Street or wherever. It's Gucci as it appears on a market stall, or Gucci as it appears in a song on the radio. So it becomes symbolic rather than about luxury or even craftsmanship. It's simply the logo. And I find it interesting that luxury brands are at this point responding to this. It's been something that people in the contemporary arts have been doing for a very long time, is kind of bringing in fake culture and trying to understand fake culture, whether it's in you know, marketplaces in, you know, Brixton Market, or whether it's in Chinese markets where this stuff is being counterfeited, and trying to interrogate what that means about capitalism and about luxury fashion And now we're really in this moment where this is becoming part of runway culture, having Gucci Ghost, and kind of we're really talking about counterfeit Gucci on runways. It seems like kind of luxury brands are kind of eating themselves or something like that.
I think especially with the last season, you know, where you had the guy with the fake, or was it fake, facial tattoos.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then the
yeah.
incorporation of that kind of almost market-like Gucci sweatshirt and t-shirt,
Yeah.
and then the kind of punk-esque
Boots,
trousers.
jeans,
Yeah,
yeah.
which is something that we hadn't seen before from him, but I guess you know and feels familiar to being something which you would assume is Gucci, you know.
And that's where it gets a little cynical for me,
Sure.
is where there's this sort of desperation to appeal to that youth market, and that feels quite cynical, and it doesn't feel as honest.
No, I don't know any young people that wear Gucci.
No.
I don't.
Well,
But is
also
that
because they
because
can't
they can't
afford it.
afford it, or because
Of
they're
course
not
not.
interested?
I think it's, you know, or people I know, it's like maybe you're lucky if you get to wear it, you know, for something, but you're not. I don't think anyone can afford it.
And here's also
Well-
where it becomes a bit like distant, I think, as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
And I definitely agree to you, Finn, about like that the logo is, you know, appearing on like Instagram and in songs and in like different types of, you know, like creative disciplines instead of like the runway and in the boutiques and stuff. I hadn't been to a Gucci store since like 2 months ago. I paid my first visit to the Oslo Gucci store. I hadn't been there before.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I go back to the counterfeit logo by Gucci? I probably wouldn't call it counterfeit. I would call it an interpretation of the logo, which is.
Well, the work
I
with
think-
Gucci Ghost was an artist who
Yeah.
was totally unrelated to Gucci,
Yes.
but had used the word Gucci and was sort
And
of
then-
playing with the logo
Yeah.
already. And that came from a kind of rebellious, I guess, anti-consumerist idea that then became swallowed into the actual mega brand
Yeah,
itself.
but and when you say I'm becoming a little bit cynical about that, where I'm cynical is I think it's quite smart on Gucci's
Oh, it's
behalf.
very smart.
But the guy who's been, you know, criticizing is very well paid to do that. So, and I'm open and tolerant, and I understand and I sympathize. But actually, we have to be cynical with the ghost more than the brand, right? Am
Yeah, I think
wrong?
a lot of people would probably think that these types
Or
of people
maybe
end up
it's
selling out.
taking
by-
the piece and like, well, let's make some money out of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you stand with this?
I mean, you know, there's like, I keep coming back to like what you said, and there's like all these like rap groups and like all these like songs, and they feature Gucci, and there's like the Gucci gang, and you know, it's, I don't know, it's become this like,
Too much?
yeah, I mean,
I think it's okay, but I think maybe where it would leave a slight taste in your mouth is the appropriation of something which is a violent youth culture to be resold to people, where it's an awful lot of money, where somebody who has tattoos all over their face could never necessarily afford it, or whatever that violent streak of reference to something comes from, right?
I mean, it's interesting that seems to fit quite seamlessly into this world.
Yeah.
Fake face tattoos or graffiti. I mean, Gucci has always been reinterpreted by the street. I'm thinking of the people like Dapper Dan in Harlem, who would buy the fabrics and repurpose them into these totally over-the-top, totally maximalist suits, which were all about the logo, but they were done in shapes and cuts and sizes. Actually, it was very much about sizes, selling to somebody in Harlem who was much bigger than the clients who would walk into the Upper East Side shops, and really reinterpreting how Gucci should be understood and worn for the street. And I just see that kind of filtering in here, and it's just a kind of interesting moment.
Does that
for
disturb
Gucci.
you, or does that interest
I think,
you?
I mean, I just, yeah, I mean, it seems an inevitable part of where a luxury brand would go. but it's certainly nothing that Giannini would ever have touched.
No. But the difference, you know, Alessandro is very interested in things and cultured and cultivated, and
Yes.
you know, and I think today things that are successful come from brains.
Yeah.
I'm saying something very obvious. I don't know. That's not exactly what I wanted to say. I think that having a culture and having an eye on the world and knowing the past and the present and going
Having
to
a
the
hungry
theater and
mind.
reading about I mean, all of that makes the fabric of society. And if you're not in touch with that, but you're only in touch with your style and what you think is good looking, then you will fail.
Yes.
His
And
attitude.
that's why he's very strong, because
Yeah.
he is well read from the classic to you know, and I think that's exactly what you said, you know, like your culture in the archives of vintage fashion will make you a better critic. I'm not flattering you, I'm just saying, you know, the whole thing.
He's the opposite of insular, and the
Exactly.
opposite of a designer in a glass tower only looking at his sketch pad and his mood board. And I think also something that they did so well, and the reason they've been able to manage this rebrand and pull it off so quickly, because now I think perfume and rebranding that would be hard, but they've just managed to do it with a new campaign for bamboo. And it's because there is this attitude in the company now of every voice is heard, everyone has an opinion, and Alessandro is quoted all the time in saying that he's really always listening to every level.
Marco
of,
as well,
of
the CEO as well.
Yeah, the entire team.
They had a problem in Japan to make the new Gucci being understood and accepted. So what did he do? The CEO, he traveled with his 4 or 5 executives around Japan, interviewed everybody, talked to the sales assistant, explained to them how to not justify, but explain it, and now it's one of the fastest growing
I was going to say
markets, you know.
about his
They have to be commercial. It's a, what, 5 billion
Yeah.
enterprise that gives.
But
what,
this is also
20,000
much more of a
people?
global identity for Gucci, I think, than it was previously. And I think these tiger patches and the embroidery and stuff like this, studded jackets and the shoes really sell very globally. It's not about a more conservative Italian customer. It's something that I can see working in.
He's not a conservative Italian customer.
But you know, it appeals
They look perfect there.
appeals to British heritage.
Yeah.
It appeals to a kind of
Absolutely.
trendy Korean. It appeals to an emerging middle class Chinese consumer.
Yeah.
It appeals to people in the Netherlands, where there's references to Dutch paintings and things like this. There's something
Definitely.
really eclectic about
I
it.
find that really interesting as well. Is the word maximal. I guess that means a lot, right? It's a crazy suit. Taking those
That's
elements,
an interesting one. I didn't think about it.
those elements of it, and turning it into something which is totally accessible, but it doesn't lose any of that character. You know, and the Japanese souvenir jacket is something which he's really played with. And when you go into the stores, you can see all of them, and they're very over the top, and they're incredibly luxury and beautiful, but it's totally accessible to any kind of customer. So being able to take that vision and totally run with it is amazing, you know. And a pair of jeans with one embroidery on it, that a guy who wouldn't necessarily wear the full floral suit, but would love those, you know. And I think that's genius.
Or a girl.
Or a girl, sorry.
Well, we're about to see their first, how do you say it, when they're together, men's and they call it the show is going to be women.
Men's and women's will be shown together.
Sorry, people. And I'm very curious, because I don't know if he's going to do, you know, the Ralph Simon way of doing it, or the Vetements way of doing it, or just putting men in, I don't know. It can be interesting to see how he treats genderless, probably.
I mean, I
But
always
it's
find
in a few minutes.
genderlessness seems quite washy in fashion, and I always like that if it's Women's Week and men are in the show, that you're still doing women's looks. And if you have a Men's Week and you're putting women in the show, that they're wearing men's looks.
But that's where we need to see if he manages to do something that doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
commercially, that's not what they would do, is it? They'd go for more of a Burberry vibe where there's, you know,
it's in the
because
store
it's a
really
certain
it's like
kind
that.
of woman who is confident enough to wear men's clothes. And I think, just thinking of my friends who buy Gucci, it's because they want to look feminine in it. And I think then again, the first collection was very girly and feminine, and it's not so much now. So maybe that is the development we're going to see.
I think that's not to keep going back to menswear, but that's another thing I found, or the most interesting thing I found, gender-wise, when I've actually worn the clothes or whatever, I've seen them. Sometimes, if I'll break it down in my mind and be like, right, where is this from? Where is this from? Every element of that men's shirt, aside from the cuff, will be from women's wear. So it's the lace collar and the covered buttons, and the fact that the buttons aren't showing. And everything about it tells you that it should be, you know, it should have breast darts and it should be buttoned up the other side, but it doesn't. It's a very normal men's cut shirt with a lot of women's wear in it, you know.
What else do we hope to see from this show? Is there anything anyone is particularly interested in seeing more of or less of? Less embroidery or?
No.
I kind of want to see him do kind of like goth or something.
I don't think he's goth.
I don't think he would.
You're saying you want no more colour, aren't you?
No,
I don't think he's
I would
goth.
like to be.
Monochrome.
I would like to be shocked by this collection. I'd like to be surprised a
But
bit
that's
more.
not what they are, I think. I think, you know, when people say it's always the same, there's so much that there's so much still to come. And maybe I'm going to be totally contradicted and sound like an idiot into
It's
minutes,
all
which
black.
is very possible. Exactly. But I would be very much surprised. Yeah, shocked, but not in a very good way in that case.
I think if he doesn't change it all up entirely, I think everyone's still going to be like, oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to see the characters that he brings in that embroidery. You know, it's like Donald Duck all of a sudden, and then where that will go. And then if he does, I think all of those people who are like, oh, it's in the air, it's time for him to change my idea again about what I thought Gucci was. And then if he does that, then it will be incredible.
Do you hope for that?
Yeah, sure, I definitely hope for that, but then if he doesn't, I think I'll still probably be quite happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so much of his maximalism lies in the styling and this idea of piling more and more on. That's why globally it can work so well, because as you were saying, you don't have to wear the full look. Few people would. You could just wear a small element of it. So perhaps it's the styling that would change and just give us a new idea of the vision. But as you were saying, I think that the designs are going to remain part of this story that he has made so clear to us, because he's this firm believer in the idea of a timeless piece, and I think it's so important to promote that in this day
he's
and
Roman,
age.
he's bold by nature, by culture, you know. I would be very much surprised it's either all black or minimal a la Phoebe Philo, you know what I mean? But
and I mean, he moved the whole operation to Rome, and
you know, I sort of like the fact that when you go to the store, there are some pieces that are carried on, but some pieces that are not the typical black trousers like Prada will do every year. I bought a little dress a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it's still there in the same color, identical. Does it bother me? No, because it means it has a long life. You see what I mean? But again, you know, maybe we shouldn't. I would be very surprised if suddenly it's very different.
I don't think the change that everyone's looking for would be for it to become minimalist, or would be.
no,
for
I
the
think
colours
that's
to go.
it's just my personal take. Really, I'd probably try and buy it if it was all gothic all of a sudden. But,
And it would make for an exciting panel right now,
It
wouldn't it?
You would look
First
amazing.
women's wear panel.
You would
Ta-da.
look pretty with a pussy bow shirt, I'm sure you would. You would. Dark green, you would look fantastic.
why, thank you.
You should try it.
I mean, I guess because in terms of the kind of fashion playing field right now, it's still going to stand out in such a dramatic way. I think I wanted to talk a bit about his honesty versus the kind of ironic takes in fashion that are going on right now. And, do I have to do this? I'm going to bring up Vetements, but to me this stands this stands very opposed to the kind of very ironic take on fashion that represents, and which to me was very exciting about Gucci and why it stands apart right now, and why I'm not going to be too bothered if it remains very true to this vision.
Well, what they've been putting out a few teasers, haven't they? And one of them was just an Instagram post saying, "What are we going to do with all this future?" Which was quite a statement. I mean, it made me instantly think of the idea of the designs being timeless. It also made me think of the aging population, all this future. I think there were headlines on the Today programme about that this morning. Not about the Gucci show, but about the aging population. So the teasers have intrigued me. And I think this is one of the animations that they put out just today on digital platforms. It's kind of like the Gucci menagerie now, which I love.
I think it's interesting.
I think that started.
You bring up Vetements. It's like, I think if you think about Gucci and Vetements, it's like Vetements stressful, Gucci is like, I can relax. And I can
Sorry,
really
I didn't
enjoy
hear
this.
the last sentence. What did you say?
I just said Vetements can be quite stressful, whereas with Gucci it's like I can relax,
Yeah.
you know.
I think
As
it's a
in,
very
it's
different
going to
kind
be a
of irony.
pleasure to look at.
Yeah, exactly. It's like pirate radio versus classical FM.
It's yeah. I think it's a very different kind of irony, and I'm not even sure that Vetements one is irony at all. I think it's almost anger.
Yeah.
I don't
Right?
see any anger about it.
You don't?
at all. No.
Everybody else
Anger.
I've got plenty of anger about it.
anger in
I'll
the
leave that
sense
for
of
my Balenciaga
bitterness, or I think Balenciaga and Vetements, notwithstanding the same designer, are very different. And I think that what Demna has been doing with Vetements, and I have been a fan, has been very interesting until the last show that I think was a little bit an autogol. Is that a word in English?
Say
You
it
know,
again.
when you put the ball in your own goal, in your own net.
Sure,
home
sure.
goal.
Home goal.
Own goal.
Yeah.
Oh, is it home?
Own goal.
Yeah,
Football
whatever.
fashion.
Sorry.
No
I
idea
think
about
it was a
football.
little bit because it's been very, very difficult to understand, and I'm sure there's something clever in his head, but it came out weird and a little bit offensive, and especially when you look at the prices. I would like to know what Alicia think about that.
About
Are we starting now?
Oh.
Possibly. Only a little bit late. So Mimma, you were mentioning about this venue as well. Can you?
Yeah, the whole headquarters have moved in a new venue close to Linate Airport, and the show space was an airplane depot, hangar, whatever you call it. So I guess it's very big, and it's white, and he can do whatever he wants in it.
Yeah.
Which I think it's paradise. So when he's
It's a stage.
when he's
isn't
told you can do whatever you want.
Stage.
They're behind glass.
Are they in glass?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not goth.
I love the way, I love the, but there is white. I love the way the models come out in such quick succession. It's this, it engulfs you, his vision. And it's almost too quick to over-interpret, which I think is also a joy. I think you don't want to, perhaps.
I am actually surprised by this first look.
Why? For the same reasons Rosanna said?
That it's white.
Yeah, just. I mean, this is less surprising, but this is all very.
Is that the actual music, you think, that we're hearing?
Ah, there's a floral. The classic floral
This
print.
is slightly more of a pastel Rococo moment, perhaps.
Yeah, very Roman Rococo.
But did you guys see the headpiece, the Gucci logo headband?
The
Oh, no,
first
I missed
look.
that.
It was the first
On the
look,
first
right?
look?
Yeah.
Second,
Oh,
yeah.
look at that! Yeah,
I did.
very kind of. Who's that tennis player in the Royal Tenenbaums? That it kind of sticks out like that. To me.
Yeah.
Quite twee.
It's not minimal and it's not goth, that's for sure.
No, it's Gucci.
I change my seat.
That's amazing.
Oh, and look, there's what he's in. Is that it looks like is that a skirt he's wearing, or is it just a very operatic coat?
I think it is kind of a very operatic
But
coat.
it's very feminine, as you were saying might happen, so.
I'm interested in this Gucci boy that Alessandro has now, because the Gucci, I say Gucci boy quite specifically because to me Gucci always had a man, and it was Tom Ford's sexy underwear man. Whereas this is much more of a softer, thinner, paler,
In heels,
feminine, young man.
effeminate boy, yeah. You're probably best placed to comment on.
I was excited I saw a PVC trouser. That was, AC/DC.
But I think the women's clothes aren't going into menswear territory, or at least I don't think they are so far.
No,
I think it's very difficult to dissect the clothes themselves unless you see them. I think the nice thing about
Particularly
Gucci
because this
show,
is so
and I've been
close.
there to a few, it's that it's a
it's quick.
spectacle and you get it all in and you almost miss
Well, it's like we were saying, it's quick succession, it engulfs you, you get the vision, but you don't overinterpret.
Exactly.
So
I'm loving it, but that's me.
No, I'm loving it too, don't worry.
And it's also quite far, so we don't really see the details.
music actually is by Classical FM too.
I thought it was interesting as well. He had begun by using a Tom Ford soundtrack in one of his earlier shows. For a
Yeah, there
Simple
was like
Man.
a respectful
Yes, yeah,
clin d'oeil.
yes. But this this music is certainly much more in his own environment. I've got to say, I'm a little thrown by the kind of pyramid structure.
I love that.
And I don't quite understand what it relates. Oh my goodness, look at that. Is that a kind of PVC dungaree type of goodness? Well, that surprised me.
It's the mood board piece.
I like the fact that it's quite bonkers, you know, it's never really related one piece to the other, but then at the end of the day it is. So what do we think about the men and women here? It's like two different collections. It's like
look at that, the dragon.
friends hanging out.
Yeah.
No, it's so complete. Actually, it's so far it's my favourite for a while, I think.
And look at this coat, it's spectacular. Oh gosh. What do you think?
It's also so quick, it's hard to differentiate
Here's a black
which
look.
is a men's look and which is a
I
women's
like this. So
True, yeah, which is great. I'm really happy to see that the flares are back.
but I'm super fed up with like text works, but it's not that much of like quotes and stuff.
Oh.
Sure, yeah.
It was one
So
of the first to
terrible.
do it. Now probably said he's moving on, right? Did we see any text here?
Yeah, we saw one
Oh.
shirt.
Okay.
That's enough.
I think what I was saying, I think this is obviously Gucci, but it's almost, to me, maybe the best possible version of what I would have expected him to do. So it's not a surprise, but it is wonderful.
It's even better than, but you know, that's what's interesting because many people have tried now to emulate, if not copy Gucci, like in the looks, and he's doing it better. It's like, that's
Yeah.
my look. And
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. It's bonkers. It's great.
But then, as we were saying, take these looks apart and they're highly commercial. I think.
And
they're
you're
highly
also
commercial
showing
even
off a
altogether.
lot of products.
Yeah.
On each
Because
look,
they
you're
can.
showing off
Because
so
they can.
many products. Yeah.
That's the power of big
Yes.
and you know, wealthy.
And even being able to really successfully show
yeah.
off small accessories like a
Yeah.
headband that will still be very reminiscent of the show, but will be very easy to buy into.
They're building a new facility for leather good and small leather good because the artisans they're using now in all of Tuscany, they can't cope with the request. All of that I know because it was this morning. I read the interview before coming in, so all of that is in that article today. And it's quite amazing. It's huge, it's in Tuscany, and because they can't cope. So that's a good problem to have, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
I want that gown.
Yeah. There's a replacement for your Tom Ford one you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
That would suit you.
It covers my arms, everything. Perfect.
Ideal.
That's for you, Rosanna.
That is for me. Look at that swirl.
I know.
There has been a lot said about the diversity of Gucci casting recently. For the forthcoming pre-fall campaign, they did a social campaign showcasing the casting of it, and it was
African American.
exactly. And there were mixed. So there was a mixed commentary on social media about that, and I think the casting for the show certainly hasn't changed season on season. I think that's probably a good thing. I think that the campaign had mixed results, so you wouldn't want to. Did you hear about this as well?
The best part of the campaign was watching the
casting
auditions.
videos.
It was quite fun.
Yeah, really fun.
And those people were very spontaneous and natural.
But wasn't it? It was. I remember it was casted by a Midland agency, which my friend Walter set up with Rachel Chandler. And they do Hood by Air, and wasn't the campaign a reference to an old? I'm forgetting the reference now.
I don't know, was it?
I think it was actually a spin-off of something that had already previously been done.
By Gucci or by Alessandro?
Not by Gucci, no.
Oh.
It's great when you kind of bring up something and then completely forget the reference. But
maybe someone can look it up.
Has anyone else noticed the sort of body modification references with nose pieces?
Piercings, yeah.
I like that.
Nose piercings.
Yeah, there's sort
I
of
didn't see
horns
it.
coming out of either side, which isn't really
Oh yes.
there, it's just a hoop, but sometimes it looks quite extreme.
But it's still going on. I mean,
the
I
hair
guess we're
going like-
around
Yeah,
80
yeah.
looks here.
yeah.
There's a
That's
lot
the
of
headband
stuff.
again.
Oh, that cape.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting everything from kind of American Western fringing to athletic headbands to kind of 80s shoulders to floral prints to like oriental umbrellas to PVC.
And Studio 54 style satin. and
Right.
Dresses for dancing.
Look at this
To
look.
pompadoured hair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how to chokers,
To logo.
to logos, it's amazing how much of a kind of cultural history this one show can span
Yeah.
and remain
That's
coherent.
amazing.
But because that's who he is.
Yeah.
He is that. And people can say, no, you don't understand, it's marketing. No, I know the guy. That's what he is. And that's why it's so successful, because I don't think he can do anything different.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't see why it should not work.
Yeah, it's true.
The color palette to me seems slightly more, pastel.
Is this the
here.
bride? The bride. Pastel than usual?
Yeah, it's giving me the kind of more subtle tones of like a Wes Anderson film than like a kind of full-on rich velvety green or and also the lighting is very
The last show was very pink as well, wasn't it? Or am I mistaken? Didn't
So
they
I think
have
it was
pink?
hard to see the looks.
They had pink carpet, I think. This is beautiful.
The pyramid to me is very strange.
It's like the Pyramid du Louvre.
It really reminds me.
Right. I mean,
Hey,
that
Japan,
makes slightly
Japanese
more,
architect.
maybe makes more
Because
sense.
there were some Japanese references in the show.
It looks very kind of Illuminati sci-fi.
It really reminds
to
me of, I don't know, Finn, you might remember this, when Klaxons and Rihanna performed at the Brits.
Yeah. Did
It's
someone
exactly
did you guys get some notes, some show notes? Did they appear somewhere? No. It's very dark. It's very hard to see, actually.
It's also a huge space.
They are behind glass, or it's an illusion?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, that's glass.
Yeah, it's glass. You can see the reflection. It's
The setting seems still very strange to me. There's like a bit of
A disconnect.
weird futurism about it or something that's not quite making sense. I mean, maybe just because Westminster Abbey seemed like such a ideal location for this kind of thing, but this seems very off on another.
but maybe it needed that
extreme.
because it doesn't want to be perceived as vintage. It believes in
Right.
knowing
Future.
what's going to happen. You know,
Yeah.
today is already past.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm making it up, but maybe it's a smart move because Westminster Abbey looked very much like his clothes, and maybe
Yes.
he wants the contrast to tell you,
Yeah.
no, it's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I really like that. I
Yeah, me
like
too.
like future optimism, because I haven't seen that so much like the previous collections, and like it's so much like 80s, like 70s, 80s, 90s, like references, and like, but I want to see what's next, and like I know like everyone does.
Yeah,
but
and it didn't want people to say it's vintage
No.
look because
No.
it's not.
it's not.
It's not Hedi Slimane, you know, it's a different kind of and I love what Eddie did, so it's not a criticism, but I think it's a different kind of approach to design.
Yeah, he's certainly not taking a vintage item and reproducing it. It's from
It's-
somewhere else, isn't it? There's a lot of vision involved.
Yes, there is a lot of vision.
I'm happy to see that.
I'm glad that the young generation approves. It's important, otherwise you're not relevant, you know, if only people like me like it, who cares? You need, no, but you need, I'm not making fun, I mean, you need to have youth. I mean, they probably can't afford it, but if they like it, it's already something.
Yeah, it's
right?
creating like values.
Yeah, and I think
That's
if you have youth and you can go and you can take some of the references and you can search for that, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, there is a lot of vision involved, but then as well, you know, you see a lot more guys going and buying big lapelled, flared 70s suits, a lot more girls entering into that side of clothing and it looking really chic again.
Yeah.
Whereas before it would have looked, you know, like too retrospective, perhaps.
Well, this
Too
is what I
costly.
liked was that this felt far more like it would encourage people to go out and do it themselves. Whereas there's been a lot of discussion around, I suppose, this oversized hoodie or the kind of streetwear meets luxury fashion idea that was about celebrating what people were already wearing and how that was more democratic. To me, this seems so much more about inspiring people to create their own looks and
Yes.
things.
Yeah, I think so too.
You
And I'm-
nailed it.
I'm so glad that this exists because it's just aspirational and you want to go out and find ways of creating this from such an eclectic mix of things.
But the layering also gives you that because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
telling you do it as you like,
yeah.
and if it's
Yeah.
what you like, it will look good, you know.
Yes.
And I agree with the street style.
Maybe
And
that
the difference between, you know, the intelligence behind this
Yes.
is completely different.
Yeah.
the outlook makes a bit more sense of it being behind glass as well. It's quite an interesting way of looking at it.
Well, I think it puts it on a stage. I think it gives it a certain disconnect between audience and the looks on the runway. And certainly when they were all moving, all the final looks, that was quite spectacular to see. With the bars between each pane of glass, it almost separated each model into a film style, you know, classic film where you see the photo negatives. And what are we going to do with all this future? Well, look at these future heirlooms that I hope to buy and give to grandchildren. And yeah, I think it's
I agree.
It's a beautiful statement on that
I think
stage.
he had a big influence on vintage and had it probably before, you know. They, I don't know, you work in vintage and you're more of an expert, but I think they revamped the attraction to vintage, and that's very good because that's the I mean, fashion is made of references, like science is made of references. You build on what has been discovered before. However, I don't think Alessandro does vintage. I think he does modern.
No, not at all. But he's changed that market too. He's taken it away from
completely.
He's taken it away from Americana and taken it much more into like a Italian tailoring and British tailoring too.
Look, he walks the whole thing. Wow.
It's a wealth of geographical and historical references, and that is why they did such a clever exclusive online exclusive last month, where there was a bag design for Europe, and it actually said Europe on it, and a bag
on Instagram.
Yeah,
I saw it. That was so smart.
And it was and you know, there was a limited run, and their limited runs online really do sell out.
And it was the same handbag with a different little reference in the animal or in the print.
Beautifully embroidered. Very clever, very, very clever.
Can we see the looks?
Let's go through the looks. Maybe we can pick some standouts or some favourites.
He did wear his logo t-shirt.
Yeah, I did like what he was wearing a lot, actually.
There's a little bit of Chanel in the first look.
Yeah, that's
it's like
I
he's
think it was
making,
very
he's
bold
showing
to-
Carl how to do Chanel. Sorry, I said it.
Does anyone have any standout looks that they enjoyed?
The
I mean, it's
rainbow
quite.
swish.
Well, we're just at the beginning.
Any rainbow and any swish, I'm there.
Yeah, there was a cape towards the
Yeah,
end.
that was
there.
spectacular. And I think also the long coat for menswear.
Yeah, that was really interesting. The first menswear look is
This one?
very Gucci.
Is that the first one?
It's amazing, I think.
I mean, I'm going to have to say that that's one of my favourite looks, but that's probably everyone's least favourite.
But I
Number
could wear
6.
that. I think any woman
I
could
love
wear
number
that.
6.
Yeah.
That's, you know, what the coat? No. The,
Yeah, the
suit,
coat.
The coat.
No, I'm
Even if
I'm
it's not
very
black?
interested. And I'm really glad socks are very in.
Oh, crap.
I know you don't like socks. I know you like trousers that go to the ground. And
I just find them too difficult to keep hold of, but anyway.
I see. No, I love seeing socks like that, so I'm very into number 6. Elise, do you have a standout look or piece that you like from the
I
show?
can't decide.
I also like the dress that you was like talking about, the pink silky
Oh yeah, the long dress.
long dress, yeah. But I also like the
Can we move it?
previous look with like the Japanese and
Oh,
the
that's what we
umbrella.
have for the moment.
I like that.
It doesn't go on after 8. Oh, sorry.
We'll just have to remember the fantasy.
Yeah, the pink dress was rather spectacular. There was a cape that was incredible. I guess probably it would cost £35,000 because it was all embroidered in a very articulate way.
I like that look, the umbrella look.
Isn't that a reference to Japan, or am I saying something stupid? That little umbrella, isn't that a
that
geisha
looks
umbrella?
Paper umbrellas with
Yeah.
the
Yeah, the
floral
that's
designs,
Japanese, right?
yeah. The kind of
But then, of course, the clever thing that I imagine we will find out in the show notes when they're available is that it won't just be Japan.
No, but it's not. As you said, you know,
Yeah.
they're very. I think that probably if I were cleverer, we would notice references to every continent.
Yeah,
but
exactly,
Sorry, guys,
exactly.
I'm not. Probably
I'm
the
sure
first
you
look
are
is very
clever enough. You
French.
just need to see it in detail, and then you'd be able to see.
I mean, you mentioned it moving away a bit from Americana, but I did see suede fringing in there, which I really enjoyed, or kind of rockabilly hair, pompadour type hair, and
We had enough of that with Coach for
Oh,
the
yes.
third time in a row.
that's true.
I love the triangle hair, like the.
Yeah,
Did you see that one?
yeah.
The headpiece, yeah.
Yeah.
Are these people Instagrams? Yeah.
And like you say, framing every look
Yeah.
in this kind of way. His style has always been very cinematic, and
Yeah, exactly.
it
He is.
certainly adds to
Yeah. He's smart.
that. We got quite a few.
Did anybody
fans.
notice that I like what he has?
I think what we were saying about referencing is probably one of the best things that you can gain from Gucci. Is not to worry too much
Yes.
about the authenticity of whether it's from here, or whether it's from there, or whether this trouser's too short, or
That one was
That's amazing.
just to do it as you feel.
I sort of love the headband on a very embroidered silk gown, and for me that's the dichotomy or the antithesis between, the streetwear, sportswear there, and the dressed up, whatever. It's quite funny. I mean, I think it's very kitsch, a Gucci headband there, but I think he can do that.
But it's also incredibly sellable. To just have a very simple athletic band with Gucci written on it.
I'm saying the way it's styled.
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
You would
wow,
imagine
look at
it
this
with the head, like the trousers with the two-line sports line. No, it goes on a silk gown, which I think it's pretty fun.
I like this one, the one with the turban.
The-
That was a very good look.
So what's happening there? It's at the end where they stop to be photographed?
I think
I
we're
guess.
looking at a backstage.
It's so clever now how designers are very aware of the power of the image off the catwalk. Marc Jacobs did that brilliantly in New York, and they're aware that these images actually go further than the catwalk looks in a lot of ways now, and just making sure that your backstage is set up for photography. These group shots are going to look amazing. It's like a ready-made campaign.
Look, talking
It
about
is.
Japanese reference.
Yes, yeah, indeed. And it's still incredibly young.
The turban here, so good.
Yeah, you're right. That's a very beautiful
That's
look
it,
with the
yeah.
green bag.
Yeah.
It's very yummy. It's desirable. No matter who you are, even people that I know that don't work in fashion that tell me, oh my God, it's bonker, it's crazy, who's wearing that? Actually, they're talking about that,
Yeah.
and
And we were talking about casting earlier. How do we reflect on the casting of the show here?
It's in keeping with that they do look a little bit geeky and young, and it's not. I was reading quite a lot in last month about how they were really working on the diversity of the catwalk, because there had been a bit of controversy perhaps when he first began of the girls looking too girlish and the boys looking thin, and I think it is in keeping with that, but he has a vision and you wouldn't necessarily want to deviate.
I think that's where, we mentioned Hedi Slimane earlier. I think that's where I see some relevance of what Slimane was doing, is that these characters, the casting is very much interested in this slightly offbeat, pale, skinny, young type.
It was interesting, last week at the BAFTAs, Naomi Harris and one other actress were, I thought they looked fantastic in Gucci, but they were on a lot of worst dress lists. And that's, that I actually found quite surprising, because you were talking about how friends not in fashion say, who is wearing this?
Yeah.
I mean, it just looks crazy. But then I think the joy of the evening wear that Gucci does is actually I think it was pre-fall last year, there was a pink gown with very simple rose here, and Rosie Huntington-Whiteley wore it on the red carpet, and she just looked the best dressed there. It was elegant, it was chic, and it was easy to understand as a woman. But I think, unfortunately, for the BAFTAs, the Gucci gowns that did appear were bordering on difficult to interpret for a certain kind
It's
of
very, people have to adapt their
audience.
eye to it. It's like a new car, you know, sometimes you see the new, whatever, BMW and like, ooh.
Yes.
But then you get used to it and you can't stand the one from 2 years before.
Yes.
I mean, probably it's going to be too far with Gucci, but it's true that even I sometimes have problem in really loving what I see on the red carpet.
Yeah.
But also, you know what I think the problem is? Is that those girls, they don't know how to move in it. They don't know how to wear it. It's like the stylist says, you have to wear this because it's the trendy thing to wear. And then it's not the right
they don't
girl
feel
and she
comfortable in
can't
it,
carry it. They don't like themselves in it and you feel it. I thought Naomi Harris didn't do it wrong. I think she looked spectacular and I think she knew how to wear it.
And
Dree Hemingway wears Gucci so well on the red carpet, hardly any makeup and a red lip, and she wears it like she's wearing a pair of jeans, and I think that's the way you've got to, if you're wearing a really maximal look. It's not that one, no, I think it was a couple along.
That's not.
It's that top
But
right.
that's, no, that's the BAFTAs 2014.
But top right, I think we have it. Along to, this is that one.
Yeah. And she can, I mean, it's beautiful, and she can do it. Not everybody can. No, I don't think Gucci red carpet is for every stylist to throw on their clients.
It's interesting.
Wrong.
It's bringing somebody into that world, isn't it? And they're not always going to make sense there, which is what I think. Because when you're wearing Gucci, you're really wearing Gucci.
Yeah.
You're like in there.
I've seen Chloe Sevigny. Chloe Sevigny was one of the first last year, I don't know where, and she looked spectacular. She's perfect for Gucci.
Yeah.
Some other people look not.
But I mean, red carpets often are dominated by very sexy. It's a lot about sex appeal.
Oh, I hate
And
block
the kind of
colour.
standouts will be kind of like Angelina Jolie's leg, or cutouts and things like that, or backless
with a
dresses.
fishtail dress by
Right, and
Michael
so
Kors.
there's this kind of emphasis on women dressing very sexy, and I think there's something interesting going on here when we talk about sexiness at Gucci. Is that a lot of these looks are actually very covered up. They're quite modest. We're
And
not
that's what's
looking at the kind
sexy.
of Tom Ford open shirts and underwear and this kind of thing.
Yeah, but
And-
Tom Ford sexy is much more refined than the sexy we see on the American red carpet, where they have the leg out, the boob out, the back out. There's barely any clothing, and I don't think it's sexy. It's just, while, I mean, Tom, I still have in mind Gwyneth Paltrow, I guess, 2 years ago with that white gown with a cape attached to it, was the chicest look, you know, and it wasn't showy. So I love the fact that Alessandra has long sleeves. I mean, just be sexy inside.
Is this sexy?
Yeah, I think
For
it
me,
looks
it
like
is.
Here's a question
it
for
looks
you.
like it looks like a hotel room that you want to get into and undress.
Very well said. I think very well said. It's like a gift you wanted wrapped.
Yeah.
A gift without anything around. It's not a gift, right?
Exactly. A wonderful sofa. There's loads of stuff you can do on a sofa.
You will mistake
I
the
also
sofa, the dress and the sofa. You will not understand which one is the sofa and which one is the dress.
Exactly.
The red carpet is the photos there are so static. It's almost like the catwalk looks as opposed to the backstage and the street style that I was just making that comparison. And I bet that those Naomi Harris at the BAFTA after party will have looked fantastic. I think Gucci, the times I've seen the dresses worn best are at a woman's birthday party, and you can tell it's her birthday party and she's twirling on the dance floor and it looks fantastic. It's not going to look
It's sexy because it's empowering.
yeah, exactly, and it gives her real confidence. And on a red carpet, when you've got 50 photographers shouting your name, it's gonna look a bit static.
Yeah, but I mean, this look, I would so go to the Oscars with it and feel like the most incredible woman on the planet. But if you listen to your style like, yeah, I'm not sure, but then you do it because they told you Gucci's good, and then you're there stiff in it. It's like, no, just wear.
It shows.
Just wear, what's his name? Doesn't come to me, the typical American guy who does red
Ralph
carpet.
Lauren?
No, the young one. Zach Posen, you know,
Yeah.
which I couldn't be caught dead in.
That's red carpet, right?
Yeah.
That's very red carpet, and that's what they are used to.
Yeah.
Tiny little diamonds and, you know, a little ring and Zach Posen, which is, a taste.
Well, I think Zach Posen is a fantastic note to finish the discussion on. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
And well done, Alessandro.
Well done, you. First panel.